Welcome, welcome. You are in Adapting SEL for Multicultural Context. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to get started in about 30 seconds. We're just waiting for some of our other friends to join us, and then we'll begin. All right, we'll go ahead and get started so that we are cognizant of our time and ensuring that you all get out of here on time. So we will begin. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Adapting SEL for Multicultural Context. My name is Carissa Harrison, and I am the Senior Manager of Professional Learning for Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. Before joining the VILS team with Digital Promise, I was a former classroom teacher, a dean of social emotional learning in Chicago. And most recently, before joining the VILS team, I served as a district specialist for SEL, school climate and culture in DC public schools. So the heart of my work included supporting school communities and understanding whole child development, providing school leaders and educators with trauma-informed practices, culturally responsive teaching, and just ensuring that our classrooms and our learning environments at our school building were healing center environments for all stakeholders, not just for our students, but thinking about for our staff and our students' families. So I am excited to share some of my knowledge in the field of SEL as your facilitator. And with me, I have Sherry. And Sherry is my colleague, and she will serve as our moderator. So I'm going to ask Sherry to say hello to all of you and give a brief introduction about yourself.
Thank you, Carissa. Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Lofton. I'm also here. I'm an instructional technology coach with the VILS program. And I come to you with experience in the classroom, teaching everything from 2nd to 8th grade. I come to you with coaching experience and also with administration experience. So I'm really excited to delve into what we have today, and I will be here to support you as well. So welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. So as you see, we both are very passionate about education and the working education with an emphasis on equity and culturally responsive teaching, school leadership, and trauma-informed practices. So we are excited to serve as your facilitator and as your moderator, and simply alongside of you as an adult learner during our time together. So let's go ahead and begin. I would like to highlight our community norms and simply invite you to do everything you can to engage in this session by taking a moment to ensure that your mic is muted unless you are speaking when we have our whole group share out, and just use the chat to make comments or to pose questions. Sherry or someone else from the VILS team will engage with you and answer your questions or respond to your comments. We also ask that you be present and just be mindful. This is your time to really and truly fill your cup with professional learning to support your practice in the field. Honor it. And most importantly, we ask that you be kind. During our time together, we hope that this community is a curated vibe with love and kindness. And so we want to just emphasize that all are welcome here. And we ask that you go hard on these issues and soft on people. Sounds good? So we'll go ahead and get started by sharing our objectives for this session. Adapting SEL for Multicultural Context. It was designed as an experiential learning experience. So with that in mind, we're going to explore relationship building tools that are a low lift. So what that means is they are going to be very easy for you to implement in your learning environment, but they're going to be high impact in building those relationships and that relational trust with your students. The activities can be digitized, and I will provide you with a few templates so that you can easily adapt and use in your learning environment. And you can also use it for collecting data about your students so that you can personalize those instructions starting on the first day of school. All right, so now, before we get started, I do have a question for you. How are you entering the space? Are you feeling calm? Are you feeling balanced? Maybe you're a little anxious like myself, or perhaps you may be overwhelmed with just the demands of preparing for the re-entry and reopening of schools, or maybe you are unable to identify the emotion that you're feeling right now, and that's totally fine. However, you may be entering in space, I would like to invite you to participate in our inclusion activity that's going to reinforce self-management. So before we dive into our professional learning, we're going to engage with this inclusion activity for the next minute. We're going to simply honor being still and practice this breathing strategy that's going to help with stress reduction and improve our focus before we dive into content. So if you're willing and if you're able, and if you are sitting down, you're going to go ahead and place your feet flat on the floor with your spine straight and relax your shoulders. And as you see on the screen, we have what appears to look like a balloon that's expanding out and in. All right. And so what you're going to do, you're going to follow this balloon and breathe in when it expands out. You're going to breathe, exhale when it decreases. Okay. So when it expands out, you're going to breathe in and exhale as it expands out. All right. So when you're ready, go ahead and take 3 deep breaths with the shape. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathe in, breathe out. And last one, breathe in, breathe out. And when you're ready, you can refocus your attention to my voice. And thank you all so much for participating in that quick mindful activity. That breathing exercise is simply just a great self-regulatory practice for not only for us as adults, but also can be used for your students if desiring focus, balance, or for emotion regulation. Again, it's just a powerful strategy to have in your toolkit. Okay.
All right, so we want to just do a little check-in with you. So how would you rate your school's culture on their use of social and emotional learning? So that's the question. So if you are new to a school and you don't know how they are, just think about the last school that you were associated with. Okay, so you're going to choose a number between 1 to 5, 1 being the least, 5 being the most. How would you rate how they do with social and emotional learning, and then put a plus next to it if you want to increase that number. So let's see how that is in the chat. Rate your school's culture on their use of social and emotional learning, 1 to 5, and put a plus next to it if you would like to increase that in the chat. So think about any school that you're associated with. And then I have one, someone who sent me a direct message. I'll just put theirs in the chat for them. Okay, so we see a lot of 3s, 2s, a lot of pluses. Okay, so this is something that we know that our schools need. And so this will be some great learning today. Awesome, thank you for engaging.
Thank you so much, Sherry. It's good to see that we have a few of us that are rating themselves as a 2 and as a 3. And I'm hoping that this next activity will really bring you some context around the power of relationships at school. And so I want you to think about this question and reflect on this question. How does the power of relationships manifest itself in your school building? Or maybe in other alternative learning environments at your school. So we're calling on the ratings. We have some that have shared that they are 3 or 2. How does relationship impact students' overall well-being and student achievement at school? I want to introduce to you this video. It's only 3 minutes that I found to be very, very informative. The Power of Relationships at School was produced by EdUtopia, featuring some researchers, educators, and even students that are passionate about sharing the science of learning and how that happens at school through relationships. So as you watch this video, make some connections to your own practice as an educator in the building, as an educator in your building. Thinking about how those relationships curate that sense of belonging and that community in your environment, and how those intentional practice manifests itself in student achievement. Again, make those connections with your own experiences. And at the conclusion of this video, we will have a whole group share out, okay?
You had so much to offer yesterday. You okay?
I'm tired.
So what's going on?
Strong relationships are central to the learning process. What the science of learning and development tells us is that we need to create learning environments which allow for strong long-term relationships for children to become attached to school and to the adults and other children in it.
When children have experiences of closeness and consistency and trust, oxytocin is released. Oxytocin has many, many positive effects on the development of the brain. So when we think about a relationship, we're not just talking about being nice to a child. We're talking about a child having an experience of attunement and trust strong enough to release the hormone oxytocin.
Good morning, Ariella. How you doing today?
The purpose of the morning greeting is to connect with them and to just make sure that I'm seeing them as humans. Like, I'm making that relationship with them, making that bond.
I prioritize relationship building because getting to know them is the best part of the job.
When I come in the morning, we usually talk about things that are happening in our community.
We're trying to build caring and respect.
The teacher is trying to understand who I am and my values as a person.
When I have a free 45 minutes or an hour, I think to myself, I could sit down and catch up on Grady, or I could go and make connections, whether it's a smile or a joke or a reminder. It validates their presence in the building.
Rock it out in the art room. It starts from so much honesty and transparency with kids. It's really easy to strive to be this like idealized, always ready to go elementary school teacher, and that's not real and that's not human. When people start talking about other things while I'm still giving directions, it feels frustrating for me and I have to take a breath. My students connect most with me when they see that I also struggle and I also have challenges. It takes a lot of vulnerability on my part.
Total familiarity.
When that student knows that you care about them, when they know that you're a human,
Let's think about that.
their academic performance in your class is going to be better.
If I'm comfortable around them, then I'm more confident around them, and it's easier to ask questions and things like that.
So when you're looking at this graph, what is it that you think happened?
Some teachers I don't always get along with the best, so then sometimes I'm like, I can't do it, so I'm just not gonna do it. But when I like the teacher, I want to do their work. I'll be like, I can learn this.
You all have done outstanding work.
Emotion and learning are completely connected. If you're in a positive emotional space, if you feel good about yourself, your teacher, that actually opens up the opportunity for more learning.
It's good to see.
You had so much to offer yesterday.
All right, welcome back. So Dr. Darling Hammond and Dr. Pamela Cantor, as you saw in the video, explain why the power of relationships are essential at school. You also heard from educators sharing how they build relationships with students by providing that non-contingent attention, such as greeting students at the door or greeting them by their name when they are coming into the learning environment, making a joke or providing that one-to-one attention. So I want to ask you again our question. And as a community, I would love to hear from you by unmuting yourself if you feel courageous enough, or dropping in the chat. How do you build an attuned and trusting relationships with students? And why is it important? Again, how do you build relational trust with your students or in the past, and why is it important? I'm seeing in the chat. It's important because connection equals to emotion and learning. Thank you for sharing.
I'm just thinking about that statement from the student. When the student said, when I liked the teacher, I'll do their work. Now, what I would rather the student say is, when I like the teacher, I'll do my work. But that's another story. But, just that whole idea. And then we think about remote learning and what we went through during that. And we experienced so many students going missing, or especially if you taught middle school or high school, even elementary school as well, them not showing up to class, but they'll show up to some classes, but not others, and then that's when I just start to think about that relationship there, because sometimes it's more than just the content. It's not just what you learn, it's being able to feel cared for by the person who is doing the teaching. So
thank you, Sherry. And that really aligns to what I see in the chat. Daniel has shared Maslow before Bloom. Before we can get to that higher order thinking, before we can get to the cognitive skills of our students, we really have to meet them where they are and ensuring that we are building those relationships and those connections. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Sherry. I see that Monica have shared. I talk with them about their interests, observe what they like, and celebrate their areas of interest. Absolutely. Amy, thank you for sharing. You have to treat them like human beings so they know they are valued. So understanding their cultural identity and validating and affirming them is very great for building that relational trust. And I'm also seeing that this opens up many conversations, because sometimes students might think that educators do not understand what it feels like. Maria, do you mind coming off of mute and maybe explaining that a little bit more? I would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Oh, hello, everybody. Yes, I'm just following up from a previous comment that I shared on the chat, saying that I teach college students. So I let them know that I myself suffer from generalized anxiety disorder. So sometimes for them, it's a surprise to see that their educators, they seem that we are so disconnected from them when we're not, and we're more closer to them. So I've had I will say, the gift of, when I share this with them, they open up and tell me, oh, so this is how I feel, or this is, I get giddy, and I tell them that every time I go to class, I get anxious, in terms of getting butterflies in my stomach, but it's not only butterflies for the preparation of the class, but also for the performance, because we all have that performance anxiety. So it's really, when I say the gift, it's really beautiful, because they open up and they tell all of the different things. And I think that makes them more personable, and they're more open and willing to connect with you and to connect with each other when they see that we're not that distance after all, even if it's online that we're doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I also shared that same connection as I opened during our inclusion activity, when I shared how I was feeling at the moment. I was saying I was feeling very anxious. And so having that courage to be vulnerable, even if I essentially specialize in this field, it really opens the opportunity to build that relational trust and build that connection with others that may have the same emotion or the same experience. So absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. These next few slides will simply just emphasize some of the research that you heard from Dr. Darlene Hammond, as well as from Dr. Pamela Cantor, just to emphasize the support and the science behind the power of relationships at school, but really looking at it through an equity lens. All right, so what is the equity connection to SEL? So social emotional learning is the lever to equity. In fact, CASEL, who is the research hub for SEL, shares that SEL is an integral part of education and human development. And if you look on your screen, you see the framework for social emotional learning, and that is composed of 5 core competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. And so when we integrate SEL into our instructions, in our school culture, in our classroom culture, and even in the communities where our schools are, it promotes an understanding of different cultures and power dynamics. SEL, and I just want you all to know this, SEL is not only for students, SEL is for adults as well. Particularly when we think about building and sustaining those healthy those healthy relationships with others from culturally diverse backgrounds. So I really want you to remember this, that today we're gonna not focus on all of the core competencies of SEL, but we're really gonna dive deeper into the power of relationships. Why? Because relationships are essential more than ever as we plan to welcome back our students into our school buildings and the reentry of schools after summer break, and especially as we continue to navigate this notorious and the trauma of this global pandemic that we all are experiencing. So relationships are going to be the key ingredient for mitigating that stress, as well as fostering a community of love. So remember this, equity is the goal, but SEL, social emotional learning, will get us there. All right, so as I mentioned before, there are a ton of research to support the positive impacts of relationships, and there are so many scholars who are engaged in the research. Amongst them are Zaretta Hammond, who's the author of Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, Dr. Pamela Cantor, who's the founder and the science advisor of Turnaround for Children, and also our partners at Langer Research. And they produce a national study for Digital Promise to examine the needs of our school communities during this pandemic. And I just want to highlight that what the study revealed was that the pandemic has caused students to miss social interactions and connections with peers and their teachers more than ever. And I know we're not surprised by that, but I want you to know that as you plan for your school year of 2021 and 2022, it's important to be intentional with fostering an environment that is built out of love and belonging, and developing those trusted relationships with your students, because they have already shared that that's what they miss most. And so this will set the foundation, this session will set the foundation for learning, and also ensuring that you are creating environments and supporting the healthy development of our students and ensuring that they reach academic success. And when you think about this, our students from low income backgrounds and students that look like me, students of color, and also our students with learning disability, they need this most. A welcoming learning environment can change the narrative, y'all, in the traditional definition for the acronym FEAR. Unsure if you ever heard of this acronym, but having these strong relationships can change the narrative of the acronym FEAR of fight everything and run, and replace it with face everything and rise. I'll say that again. Creating this welcoming and learning environment can change the narrative in that traditional definition for fear, fight everything and run, and replace it with face everything and rise. So an environment where healthy relationships are fostered, they're going to, again, create the conditions for students to take those academic risks, make those responsible decisions, and allow them to problem solve and have that higher order thinking on Maslow. All right. So we have all of this data, we have all of this research, and I want to explain to you why we are here today, right? So you are here to take action in adopting those practices, such as culturally responsive pedagogy that is going to be requiring you to be intentional around how you demonstrate your love for your students and the care for them. And I want to highlight for those that are interested in neuroscience, we know that neuroscience tells us that when students feel connected and safe, such as having that sense of belonging in your classroom environment, due to your use of affirmative language or providing that non-contingent attention, such as finding time to talk about anything other than school, and consistently finding opportunities to integrate relationship building throughout the school day, the brain releases a hormone called oxytocin, right? You may have heard of this. Oxytocin is commonly referred to the love hormone, also known as the bonding hormone. And so when we are having those feelings of connection and being validated and love, you are in the brain, we are releasing this hormone called oxytocin, which is the love hormone. So our brain is hardwired to function in cooperative relationship. And so knowing this, I just strongly encourage you all to reflect on your past practices for building relationships with students and just being open to refine your practices by being open to the additional strategies that we will share in just a few moments so that you can foster that loving community in your learning environment. So I hope that the tools today will provide you with additional strategies and serve you and your students for building relationships. So I know that was a lot, so we're going to pause for a second, and I'm going to invite Sherry to do a pulse check.
Yes, so I just wanted to see how are we doing. So please put a 1 in the chat if you feel unclear about the importance of building relationships with students at school, or 2, if you understand the importance of building relationships with students, or 3, if I'm hitting the bullseye, I could explain the importance of building relationships with students at school. So 1, 2, or 3, based on how you're thinking we're doing with explaining the importance of it. Awesome, awesome. So we have like some 2.5, some 2+, some 3s. Good, good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we are ready to move right into the tools for building relationships. So the following tools, they're just going to support you in fostering those interpersonal relationships between student to student and between student to teacher at school, or if you are in higher ed as well. So as I introduce each tool, Sherry may drop a link to a template in the chat for you to make a copy and save to your files. And you are more than welcome to adapt it to meet your students' need as you deem fit. All right. So the first one, student survey. Many of you may be very familiar with student surveys, but student surveys are a great way to get to know your students, especially early in the school year or the semester. And this digital survey can be used to collect student data profiles by asking them questions such as, who makes you feel like yourself? Who are important people in your community? And where and when do you feel the most comfortable? So if you're interested in implementing student surveys, here's what you would do as an educator. You're going to adapt or adopt the survey that was dropped in the chat, the survey questions, and assign them to your students to complete as a form of data collection so that you can get to know them during the beginning of the school year or during the start of your semester if you are changing your classes. You're also going to review the data and disaggregate that data so that you can identify trends, similar interests with your students so that you can create that individual data profile or support you with cooperative learning groups. It's very, very important, and I'm going to say this, and it's not on the screen, very important that you also complete the survey and share with your students the responses to those questions. I know when I was teaching a reading course to immigrants that were taking a class at a community college where I served as an adjunct reading professor, I also used the student survey. It wasn't this exact one, but very similar. And this was my go-to. I would briefly share a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation on day 1 of class, sharing my background, and I will also insert it into my class syllabus. However your teaching style may be, I just ask that you lean into vulnerability and initiate the start of building that relational trust with your students. Okay, and as far as the student, what is the student doing? The student is simply reflecting on their personal values, their personal beliefs, and their interests, and they're going to share their answers on that questionnaire that you're going to provide for them. And again, if you did not get it, Sherry will drop that link in the chat for you for you to make a copy and save. All right. And the second one, connection post-its. So connection post-its, they're going to support educators in making those personal connections, but not just your targeted group of students. So if you're working with students that may be in tier 2 or tier 3, this strategy is for all students. You can be utilizing this in the tier 1 and differentiating it for students. And as an educator, you can either use those paper-based sticky post-its that you can get from the dollar section if you are supporting students in person, or you can use the digital postcard that I believe Sherry has already dropped in the chat. Thank you, Sherry. And what you're also going to do is just write a personal note to each student and providing words of encouragement or gratitude or a joke of a day. I had a dean that used to share a joke of a day with his students, or just to start an ongoing conversation. You're also going to identify the frequency of how often you're going to share your connection post-its with students. Perhaps you're going to do this 2 to 3 times a day. Excuse me, identifying 2 to 3 students that you want to write post-its a day, or maybe you're doing this once a month for your class or on a bi-weekly basis, but you're going to identify the frequency. If you would like a digital copy, Sherry dropped that into the chat for you, but you can also create your own using Google Slides or you can use Canva. I did this as an SEL specialist supporting elementary and middle schools. And when I did a presentation for the special education department, the LEA reps, serving LEA reps, I created these digital Valentine's Day grams in Canva, and I delivered these notes of gratitude in these school leaders' inbox. And not only did it boost their mood, but it also enhanced my mood. It felt good to do something nice for someone else. And I'm sure I was releasing that oxytocin in my own brain and also releasing the oxytocin in theirs. So it's a great practice for building relationships and connection. Again, you can be as creative as you want, as you think about making your own digital postcard or post-it note. But you want to make sure that whatever you share on that post-it is specific positive feedback or affirmative language, because it's going to build that person's confidence and essentially be a bucket filler for them in sustaining and maintaining those healthy relationships. All right, and so what is the student doing? So after they read the note, the individual can respond verbally or they can respond in writing, but this practice can be adopted by not only building relationships between the teachers and students, you can also offer this practice as you model it a few times for your students as well. They can write connection post-its to student to build those interpersonal skills in that community in the classroom. So again, connection post-its are just great practice for community building, making those connections. And if words of affirmation is their love language, you're also meeting them there. Sherry has dropped that link in the chat, I believe. Again, make your copy and be sure to share all of these copies with your teammates as well. And then the last one that I'm going to share with you are relationship skills. The final one is Culture Box. Culture Boxes really cultivate social awareness, is going to tap into not only relationship building, but also tap into social awareness, self-awareness as well. And as an educator, you will be informally collecting the data to learn more about your students' identity and their culture. And you're going to be leveraging new knowledge of the students' cultural identity so that you can make the connection and include it in your academic content or personalizing your instructions or developing those cooperative learning groups. So another best practice before sharing this with your students is for you to really lean into vulnerability and share your own cultural identity as a model for students. So your ability to be vulnerable and transparent, it can create a safe space for students and for them to show up as their authentic self while completing the task. It also allows for students to get to know you as a person, not just as your title as their teacher or their administrator, but get to know you outside of the classroom. That's really gonna allow for them to build that relational trust. So I'm gonna practice transparency and vulnerability, and I'm gonna share my culture box. And I use Bitmoji to share my digital story, and the images that you see on your screen translate my personal narrative. And so I'm going to communicate that to y'all so that you can get to know a little bit about me. So I am a Black woman whose pronouns are she, her, and hers. I consider myself an artist and a digital storyteller that artistically shares culture experience of people, especially people of color. Through photography, I love to take photos, and through short documentaries, I love to make videos as well. And I am an advocate for social justice, and my cultural roots are grounded in Virginia. And I like to call myself a cool mom. I'm also a new mom to a toddler, a 2-year-old. And I love to travel. I love to travel around the world, in especially places that are part of the African diaspora. But I also love to visit Asia. My favorite place was Thailand. And I also see the world as my classroom. So that is my digital story. That is my background for my culture box. And so what you want to do is also share your digital story similar to how I did mine. So you can use Bitmoji, or you can get creative and use other applications that you may know of. All right, and so the student, what are the students doing? They're going to be collecting artifacts such as photos, letters, perhaps they might want to use their family recipe to share a little bit about themselves and their cultural background, or other objects about their culture with the class. And I will encourage you to allow your students to have creative freedom for sharing and presenting. They may want to use Bitmoji, Virtual Gallery, and Google Slides to share their story, but you can also use the other applications that you see here on the screen, such as Flipgrid, Padlet, as well. These are great for technology integration with this practice. So those are our 3 strategies that I would like to share with you today: student surveys, connection post-its, and culture box. I'm gonna now give you the opportunity to learn more about one of the practice, and really give you about 5 minutes to explore the student survey, because we didn't have time to really go through all of the questions. And so I encourage you to use this, the next 5 minutes, to begin to draft your responses if you are interested in using the student survey in your classroom environment. And then after 5 minutes, we're going to return and answer one of the questions from the survey. And that question is, what are the 3 qualities of a good teacher? All right, so you're going to take the next 5 minutes, and I see that the clock has already started. So the next about 4 minutes to really explore some of the questions, and Sherry has dropped that link in the chat again for you, and be ready to share what are the 3 qualities of a good teacher. So think about what are the 3 great qualities of you, or 3 great qualities of a teacher that you can recall. Sounds good? All right.
I'm curious too, I know Dr. Ortiz talked about how the student survey could be a jumping off point to, perhaps that was Rita. Rita was talking about how the student survey could be a jumping off point to finding out some of the traumas that the students have been through. Because Dr. Ortiz was asking about how do we deal with trauma when it shows up unexpectedly in the classroom. So I don't know if you'll be able to support us in looking into that too when we come back.
Thank you, Sherry. And can you do me a favor and repeat that again? I was so engaged in the chat since I couldn't read it while presenting. So I heard you, but I was listening, but I wasn't paying attention. So
I love the authenticity here. Yes. So Dr. Ortiz was asking about what happens when student trauma shows up in unexpected ways in the classroom. You know, how do we deal with that? And then Rita jumped in and said, well, the survey may be a place where some of that starts to come out unexpectedly. You know, sometimes you ask a question and then you get a lot of a response from students that you didn't expect to get back. And sometimes it's heavy. So how do we deal with that when we see trauma manifesting itself in ways that folks may not even look at or see as trauma? They may think this person is just inattentive, or they're just acting out or taking it personally, when really it's the remnants of trauma.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if Rita expanded on that a little bit more, but I do agree that the student survey would allow you to really leverage some of those responses on that questionnaire. So perhaps it is a place or someone somewhere in the building where they feel calm. And so maybe giving them that calm down time, or that time for them to self-regulate those emotions if they are showing up, is utilizing those strategies or those responses from that student survey. Perhaps it's a person in the building. You learn that from the survey as well. So maybe leveraging that person in the building to help them self-regulate, perhaps if that shows up in the classroom. So that's why it's very, very important to build those relationships during the first 60 days of school, so that you can see that student as an individual and really leverage their interests, their cultural background to support them with those SEL skills. We have about 30 seconds and we'll be joining back together. I love that Daniel has shared also in the chat, is thinking about incorporating ways to address trauma in your lesson planning. So being very intentional about differentiation, right? And how you can design your lesson in a way where it's trauma informed, and you are planning for those behaviors, or planning to support the student's needs academically in your lesson plans. So welcome back. I hope you took the time to explore some of the questions. If you were distracted by the conversation, we do apologize. But we are going to now have an opportunity to get to know some of you in the building, the characteristics that makes you a great teacher, by answering one of the questions that were on the questionnaire. What are the three qualities of a good teacher? And we're going to practice this waterfall activity that Sherry, who is the engaging strategy queen, I've seen her present once before, a few times actually, and they did this really cool activity called the waterfall activity. I don't want to mess this up. So Sherry, do you mind explaining to them before they press send?
Absolutely, yes. So if everyone could just think about that, you know, those qualities that make up a good teacher, start to type them in the chat. And then when we give you the okay, if you could hit enter at the same time so we can see everyone's responses at the same time, that would be great. So what are the three qualities of a good teacher? And we have that in the chat as well. We'll give you a few seconds. So go ahead, hold on to it. And then we'll hit, we will hit enter in just a moment. Hold on to it.
I'm actually doing this one as well. Are we ready, Sherry?
We're ready. Let's go. What are the three qualities of a good teacher?
Wow. Optimistic, empathetic, innovative, creative, vulnerable, and loving, patient, listener, authentic, active listener, absolutely, present, doing individualized attention, content knowledge, seeing a lot of some of the same qualities in this space, passionate, intellectual curiosity, and authenticity. Thank you all, thank you all, thank you all so much for sharing those responses. It's so great to hear and experience some of these great educators in this space, because you are teaching some of our future leaders, or all of our future leaders. So thank you all so much.
I wanted to touch on one question that asked, can the chat be saved? And yes, if you go at the very bottom where it has the 3 dots next to file, if you click that and you can hit save chat. Always with these, I save the chats because there's so many intellectuals in the session. So thank you so much for asking that, Suzanne.
So although I shared only 3 strategies today, if you are looking for additional resources for building and maintaining healthy relationships in your environment, I will highly recommend our free online tool that houses a vetted list of resources for building relationships. And Sherry is going to drop that link in the chat. And if you click on that link and scroll down to your desired grade band of interest, you can explore some additional tools specifically for social awareness and relationship skills. So I believe Sherry has dropped that in the chat. At your own leisure, please check it out and save some of those strategies so that you can implement in either your advisory, doing your morning meetings, or integrated throughout the school day as well. And if you are anything like myself, I know we've been dropping a lot of stuff in the chat. Every 2 or 3 minutes, we've been dropping links. And sometimes that can feel overwhelming. I've been in your place where I have been the learner, the student, and I can't keep up with all of these links. So we're gonna also follow up with an email of this recording and sharing these supplemental resources as well. So don't get anxious about it. We got you covered. All right, so as we prepare to close out our learning today, I just want to leave you all with an optimistic closing. And this closing is a quote that comes from Zaretta Hammond. And I want you to reflect on this quote. It reads, "Culturally responsive relationships aren't just something nice to have. They are critical. And the only way we get students to open up to us is to show we authentically care about who they are, what they have to say, and how they feel." I hope this new school year brings all of you more love in your learning spaces, opportunities for you to bond and make meaningful connections with your students while also honoring their voices. I hope today's tools, the student survey, the culture box, or the connection post-its, or maybe they are some of the strategies that you find on our Learning Variability Navigator, helps you in fostering a sense of belonging for all, despite where they come from. You as an educator, you have so much power in being a champion for our students, loving on them, validating them, affirming their identity, and honoring the diversity in your classroom. I wish all of you a season of attunement and trusting relationships. That's it for me, guys. My name is Carissa Harrison, and I just want to say thank you all so much for allowing me to lean in this afternoon on the power of relationships and adapting social emotional learning for a multicultural context. Please keep in touch. I'll drop my contact information if you all have further questions or you just want to brainstorm around ways to build those connections with your students. Again, thank you, and I'll pass it over to Sherry to close us out.
Thank you so much for that, Carissa. We really appreciate that. This has been, I'm overwhelmed by the thoughts and the ideas shared today. So thank you for giving us the space. So, all right, if we can go to the next slide, we'll go ahead and everyone here, if you could please complete our attendance form. So I've just dropped that in the chat. If you could click that for us, it really helps us so that we can give you the type of content that you're looking for. And we also want to make sure you know, Rita put this in earlier, but all of our Summer of Powerful Learning series, we record them and we have them available at this link. So if for some reason you can't join us, you can go ahead and click that link and it's going to be there. So you can bookmark that link and you'll see the recordings there as well. So thank you so much. I do want to give everyone the copy of the deck too before we head out. Here we go.
And I can also stay behind. We have about 10 more minutes or less than 10 minutes. So if anyone want to stay behind and chat, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have from this presentation as well.